Alright, so now what we have to get into is the actual texture baking procedure. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make sure I'm in object mode. Okay, and what I want to do now is just, I noticed this isn't any longer in my low poly sword layer, so I'm just going to add it there, turn that on, and I just want to make sure my layers are set properly. So the picture plane should still be there, we're going to ignore it, so just turn it off, and your high poly and your low poly sword need to be on at this point, okay? And what we have to do now is go into this tab on the top right called texture baking, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to open up this one with the dots. It's called texture baking settings. So we're going to open that one up. And in here, we are going to have all the options that we have for texture baking. And this part's pretty straightforward. All we're going to do is we're going to go into baking. We're going to go into targets, okay? And we're going to select our low poly sword first. So turn off the high poly sword in the layer editor. So just turn it off, select, and we're going to go add selected. Okay, so now we have this added there. For your own ease of use, what you might want to do is go into attribute editor and just rename it. So it's like, I don't know, low poly sword. Okay. And that should now, well, let's just remove it, select it again, and say add selected. And now it'll call it low poly sword. All right. So now let's go into our source, which is the one below it, right? And we're going to go back into channel layers. We're going to turn off the low poly sword, turn on the high poly sword, select the high poly sword, and all the pieces, if it isn't combined, I'm actually going to combine mine. I thought these were combined, but I guess that got messed up somehow. So they're combined again. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go attribute editor, and I'm going to say high poly sword. Okay, and I'm going to say add selected. So now you should have low poly sword in the top and high poly sword in the bottom. Okay, so that's basically the biggest part of this job. And we're going to go into the transfer settings and just check some things in here. Everything is probably going to be set normal and we're not going to have to do anything, and that's the case. Yep, we're going to be good here. So let's go into common settings and texture bake settings and just check everything here. We want to make our texture bake settings width 2048 for now. Yeah, 2048, depending. If I always like to bake really high, and I have a powerful enough computer to do it, so it's fine. And you might want to even ramp that up to like 4096. In fact, that's what I think I'm going to do. And so that's basically the resolution of the map, right? So that's going to be your final resolution. And Dota doesn't use a 4096, so you don't need to do it this high, but I like to do it this high and then convert down. It just gives me the option of having a nice a high quality texture map also. So I'll leave it there. And the directory we want to select. So we're going to go into this little folder. And if you have a folder set up, that's fine, but just pick a place where you can get to these files again. I'm going to go right click, new. Am I in the right place? Yes. New, right click, new folder. And I'm going to call this textures-raw. Or actually, I'm going to rename that textures-output. Okay. And I'm going to go into there, and I'm going to name this file. Actually, I don't have to do anything. I'm just going to hit select folder. Okay. So that's going to set its directory as to where it's going to place all these files. So that's always useful to do. And now it's just a matter of going into the outputs, and we need to turn on normal map. And we need to go into the diffuse and ambient and indirect illumination. Okay, so it's going to create a map for each one of these, and I like to use them for different purposes, so they may or may not be used, but those are the three that I find useful. So let's just do it there, okay? And let's close this for now, I think. Actually, we don't even need to close it. We can probably do a bake right now. So yeah, so we do have to close it. So close that. All right, so where you guys should be right now is you should have your low poly sword with the checkers and your high poly sword without the checkers, right? So what we want to do now is make sure that the low poly sword doesn't have those checkers on it anymore. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into materials, we're going to go into our material editor, and we're just going to select it and go right click, assign selected shader. Okay, then we can just close this up, and we'll do that to the Fong, right? And we want to make sure that this Fong is set to white, so just double check. And I'm just going to go into the attribute editor, and I'm just going to slide this all the way to the right and make sure it's fully white. Okay, so the next thing we're going to want to do is, so we want this to bake our lighting, but we don't want it to have the shadowing that it currently has. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to enforce basically a global lighting situation, and this baking solution does have global illumination, and we're going to use it, but we want to make sure that we're forcing it to have a good bake. So anyway, so just go into create, okay, and we're going to go lights, and we're going to go point lights. Okay, so this first one, I'm just going to go into this the positioning, and I'm going to set this one to, I don't know, 15 on the x-axis. Okay, then I'm going to go create, and I'm going to go lights, and I'm going to go point light, and I'm going to create this one, and I'm going to make this one on the negative 15 x-axis. Okay, then I'm going to go lights, create, lights, point light, and I'm going to put this one on the z-axis at negative 15, and I'm going to go lights, create, lights, point light, and I'm going to put this one on the positive 15 on the z-axis. Okay, so now we have basically 4 lights encompassing this thing. So if I were to look at this from the top, which is here, this is what I should look at. Okay, so I've got my sword in the middle, and I've got my lights surrounding the outside. Okay, so one more time I want to go through our baking solution and just make sure that everything is set the way I want you to set it, because I kind of tested it a little bit and I found some things that were not so perfect. So we're going to go through this one more time and just make sure everything's set right and we're good. So let's go into here, which is the little buttoned one, right? And we're going to come into here, and the first thing I want you to make sure is that the global illumination is turned on. I want final gather on for the first one and path tracer for the second one. Okay, under baking, we're going to have the low poly sword in the target model, and we're going to have the high poly sword in the source. And in here, we had the front range set to 100, which is default. Just put that down to something a little more reasonable, like 10. Okay, so basically, the range is the distance that it's going to be checking within, and the farther the distance, the more likely it'll get the surface, but the less accurate it'll be. So you want to lower this as low as you can get it without actually causing problems. So you might want to do a couple tests and just change these numbers down until it starts to cause issues. Okay, I found 10 to be pretty good, but depending on how tight you made your wrapper is how close you can make this. I could probably go less too, but 10 worked out for me, so I'm just going to keep it at that. Make sure this is set to world space. Make sure that the selection is set to distance. Ignore inconsistent normals. Yeah, and make sure this bilinear filter is turned off. Okay, so that for some reason that causes some issues. I'm going to go ahead and set this back to our 4096 like you have, and we should be pretty much good. So down here, I think all you're really going to need is the full shading and the normal map to make your life easy for testing. But if you want, you can turn on the other ones too. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to turn on Indirect Illumination, and I'm going to go ahead and turn on my Ambient and my Diffuse. Okay, so I'm just going to close this up now, because now that should be all set. Everything in here should be good. Okay, so just make sure your settings are just like mine. I'm just going to go here, just have one more look. So front range is 10, back range is 10. Width is 4096, height is 4096. We have our folder selected. We are saving the file, and our full shading is turned on, indirect illumination is turned on, diffuse is turned on, ambient is turned on, and normal map is turned on. Normal map is set to tangent space, and that's everything, okay? So close that. So the last thing we have to do is go into channel blocks, make sure both of our layers are turned on, and go ahead and bake. Here we go. Click the texture bake button and get ready to wait for a little while. Alright, so what you should have now is something that looks kind of like this. So the question is, what do we do with it now? So we've done our bake, we've done it, it's done. So now all it's a matter of doing is applying it, okay? So let's just close our window. Let's turn off our high poly sword since we're not going to need it. Let's rotate into position and kind of get a good nice close look. And let's go ahead and go into polygons, into materials, and click on the hypershader, okay? So what we're going to do in here now is we want to create a Directx shader, okay? So select the object and just hit this DX11, okay? So that'll put up this now. So what we want to do is we want to start applying these textures, okay? So select your DX11 shader, and let's start managing the maps. Okay, so in here now you have all sorts of different selectables. Okay, all we're really going to worry about for now, just to see if everything baked properly and everything looks good, is we're going to need to go into the diffuse and turn on diffuse, and we're going to select the diffuse, and we're going to go image name, and we're going to go into our textures output, and you're going to see that we have all these files now. Okay. So the one we're going to probably want to grab is the beauty shot, I'm assuming. Yeah, we can try the diffuse. Let's grab the diffuse. So we'll grab diffuse, and all we have to do now is just turn this on, okay? And the other thing we're going to have to do, it doesn't seem to be applying. I'm not sure why. Let me go back. Oops, back. It is here, it is on. Why isn't it seeing it? That's strange. Maybe it's not applied. Let's go back into our hypershader, and let's just make sure this DX11 shader is actually being applied. Right click, assign material to selection. It is. So why is it not displaying properly? I have materials turned. Oh, I didn't have the material turned on. Okay. So once I have the material turned on, I have a little something happening. So what I now need to do is zoom out a bit. And I'm just going to go back into my hypershader, and I'm going to go to DX11 shader, and I'm just going to continue doing my stuff in here. So under the normals, where is it? Normals. You know what? I think I was right originally. Let's go into this diffuse again, and let's change this texture, not to diffuse. Let's change it to the beauty. Yeah, that definitely is better, okay? So that's better. That's what I was hoping to see, something more like. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to turn on the normal map. So let's just X out of there. Let's scroll down a little bit, and let's find the normal map. So here's the normal map. We're going to say, I do want a normal map, and it's going to automatically do something funky and weird like that, but that's okay. We're going to select the map itself, and we're going to go in here, and we're going to look for the one that says normals. Where are you? Here we go. Bake normals, low poly. Go ahead and say open. And now we're starting to get some really good reflectivity, and things are starting to look the way we want them. So that's actually looking pretty good. Even from a distance, that's starting to look really nice. And we're getting very close. So I can see that we're probably going to have to do a slightly higher polygon object, because this is just never going to smooth nice. I mean, it does it from the sides pretty good, but from the front it really looks pretty blocky. So Nothing to fear there. So what we're going to do is we're just going to close this down. Alright guys, so what we have to do now is kind of add a little bit of detail just to give us some extra kind of control, because I'm just not really happy with the way this is so angular and here is so angular and etc. So what I'm going to try to do here is I'm going to try to add polygons to make that transition a little bit more natural. Okay, at the same time as I'm going to be removing polygons to keep our number of tries down to 400. So that number is really important to us. We got to keep that at 400 or less. So, you know, that's what we're going to be working on. And right now we're at 386 or so. Wherever you're at, that's where you're going to be. But that's basically what we have to work towards. We have to really get this number below 400 or at 400. Ideally, it'll be exactly 400. But yeah, so let's get started and see where we can add and remove as we need. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the modeling toolkit and I'm going to grab my connect tool, and I know I'd like to have 2 rings here, so I'm just going to make this 2, set my slide to 50 and my pinch at 0, and just undo the connect button. Once you're done, that'll leave it made, and we're going to do the same thing on the other side. The reason I'm using the connect tool in this case is because I'd like it to all be absolutely symmetrical, and I don't want to have to redo my mirroring process and have to remap everything, so that's why I'm doing it this way. This will keep everything absolutely the same on both sides, and we should be good to go. So I'm going to undo my connect, and now I'm kind of heavily over my polygon limit, so we're going to have to work to get that lower, and we're probably going to have to UV a little bit, but that's okay. That's not a big deal. So let's zoom into this area, and let's take a look at what we can do. So the first thing that I'd like to do, you know what? What we should do right now is go into the channel box layer editor. Let's go back to the way we were doing it earlier. Let's turn on the high poly sword, put it on T mode. Okay, and let's just kind of toggle back and forth to see where we're not lining up nicely. Say we can just toggle and see. So that top really needs a little more control. So let's get in there, and what we're going to do is we're going to grab, I wonder if we should get rid of that control loop for now. No, I don't want to get rid of that yet. But that control loop added a lot of polygons, and we may not need it. So, but for now, I'd like to keep it because it really does make that softening of that edge work nicely. But at the same time, it really, you know, it can hurt us, as you can see, because now manipulating this is going to be a little bit of a challenge. But anyway, we'll get through it. So let's go vertex. Let's zoom into our front view where we have outlines, and select both of these, and let's just move it into position so it fits a little bit more like it should. Now this one, yeah, we're going to do a bit of manipulation here. So let's move it way down, and then use the scale tool to move it out. That's kind of decent. A little bit more would be nice, actually. It's just very hard to use this tool at this point. So that's good. And now we're going to grab our 2 other points. So we're going to go right click. Actually, we don't even need to go right click. Just grab the select tool again. Let's select and scale. And just kind of make it a little bit smoother. And that's going to do okay. Let's grab these guys and suck them in a bit more. Yeah, that's following a lot nicer. Okay, and the last ones are going to be these 2 here. And I think that's just going to do a much nicer job of what we want to get done here. So scale. And let's guess these guys can come in some more, because that's pretty that's looking a lot better already. I almost want to add one more loop, but I don't think we can afford it. Right click, vertex. Let's bring this guy. Notice that he wasn't quite so well aligned, so let's bring that up to about there. Let's bring these guys inward. And ideally you would do this before you did all your normal mapping and your UV mapping, but that's okay. We're only really going to be working on this one part, so I think we can just reflatten it. It didn't take that long. We can just put it right back into position, and it's good to know that you're not committed. So this is actually kind of good. So yeah, that's going to be okay. Now let's go into the modeling toolkit again. Let's grab our connect tool again, and let's just make this 1 this time. We don't want to overdo it. And, oh, I'm sorry, you have to be in the face mode. Oh, I'm sorry, edge mode. So go to edge mode, connect, and grab a loop here. And can you do that? No. So connect and connect. All right, so that should do it. Now let's just go vertex and bring these two up just to give this a nice tighter feel. And in fact, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to pull these ones out further. Now we're starting to get, we're 100 polygons over max limit, so we're definitely overdoing it at this point with the polygons, and I'm going to have to go in and kind of do a little magic to get this back to our poly count, but that's okay, we'll get to it. Okay, and I'm just bringing him up a little bit. So that just is going to make a nice smoother transition, and I think these guys are going to end up on the outside. So let's do that and move and scale. It's very hard to use the scale tool in this case, but we have to. Do I have like discrete on or something? Because it's really not easy. Maybe my mouse is just too accurate. Yeah, if you have an adjustable mouse that has a faster or slower move speed, you might want to adjust it for the scaling, because it's extremely sensitive. So having a little bit of a more forgiving speed on your mouse might make all the difference in the world. So I think we can, you know what, let's bring this guy out just a little bit more. This is killing me, but we'll fix that. And we're going to actually move them out and down, because that's where all the really big transitions are happening. This up here I think we can just live with. And move this down. All right. Let's just take a look. Yeah, that's going to look a lot better. Now don't worry about how it's, in fact what we should do at this point is put the old texture back on it so we're not confused by this. So we're going to go object mode, and we're going to go into our materials palette, and we're going to open up our hypershade. We're going to select Fong and right click assign initial shading group to selection. And this way we don't get confused by what we see. So that should be good. And close this down again. So now what we have to do is start optimizing and getting this to a point where we can use it. So we know that all this is technically flat. So one way we can easily optimize right now is get rid of this whole line, excepting this part right here, because all of this is perfectly flat, right? So let's start there. Let's go right click, edge mode, select, double click. That'll grab that whole outside loop and delete. Ooh, that doesn't do it. We can't get rid of this guy. So yeah, we'll just get rid of these on the end. Oops. And that one. and delete those. So that's going to substantially reduce our polys. That did. But we now have to kind of quadrify this a little bit. So let's see how we can do that. This will make it into a tri, and that'll be a quad. So that's not so good. This one we definitely have to fix. So, but let's worry about that afterwards. We'll just select for now and double click, remove the outside ones, and delete. And we're down to 466. This is definitely an issue. I've got to see what I can do about that. Although I'm not really sure. Once it bakes, it may be okay. Generally speaking, you can get away with more than 4-sided objects if you have, because everything breaks down to triangles anyway. You know, this is counting how many triangles there are. So you can get away with it but you might want to force it. So what we'll do is we'll go into the points, we'll select this point and go connect, and undo the connect button. And we'll do this point and go connect, and undo the point button. So we'll do this one and go connect and undo, and this one and go connect. Oops, yeah, connect and undo. Great. So now that's going to be clean enough. And that didn't increase our poly count, as you can see, right? It's still 466. The reason that is because all I'm doing is telling it where I want the triangles to be formed. And it's not really changing the poly count right now. You know, if I add geometry, that's a different story. So connect. All right, that one's good. And as you can see, I'm just trying to enforce the way that these are going to be going. I don't really even have to do this, but I think it's a good idea. So connect, and there we go. All right, so that should be looking pretty good. We still have to reduce some polygons. We still have too many. So what we're going to do now is try to see if we can save some in some other areas. This bottom is about as small as we can possibly make it, so we're not going to even mess with that. I mean, we may have no choice but to remove some of these ring loops because they add a lot of polygons quickly. So we'll see about that, though. I'm going to reserve that for absolute last in case I have nowhere else I can go. We can remove these up the top for the most part. So let's do that right now. Right click, edge. Let's grab these 3 and delete. And now we're down to 462. We're not doing it super fast right now. Let's grab these 3 and delete. And we're getting a little closer. Now this we're going to have to force the polys to go the way we want them. So let's go into connect and like so, and connect and connect and like so, and connect. So now we should have that working for us. And what else can I do to kind of make this a little better here? Let's see. Oh, we can definitely do some in the sword. So the first ones we'll get rid of these, are these here. So just double click that whole loop. Okay, so I just took the whole loop with me. Okay, and I'm just going to go delete. And that's going to make it really simple. And we're now down to 426. And we're going to get rid of all these around here. And can I do that? Yeah, I can. So let's get rid of these and these. And these and these. And delete. Okay. So now we have to create these as triangles. So let's do that. So let's go point, connect, select, select, undo. So I'm just shaving that in half right there. What I was basically wondering is if I could get rid of this whole loop, and I really can't. And it is really hard to get to that point. Okay, connect and connect. So now what I've got is this loop is the only one really on this piece. So I just want you to see how that looks now. So we had a line running down the middle of this. We got rid of that whole thing, and we just connected it across the top. Okay, so that's all. So let's just see where else we can find savings and see what we can do. And I'm just looking for a place to get a little bit more savings right now. This guy might help us. Right click, edge, and delete him. We're down to 406. We're getting close. This. See if we can just save without costing anything dear. Still going to end up being the same number of polygons though. It doesn't actually fix anything, but we might be able to just get rid of the one on the bottom. So that's what we'll do, because the bottom is going to be the least cared for. So yes, that did it. So now we're down to 390, and all we have to do is try out these. So let's make these into triangles, and we should be on our way. So we're just going to grab Connect tool, go to our little point mode. You can also go right-click vertex, connect, and the last one. Grab this one, and connect. And let's rotate to the back side. Let's go point, point, connect, and point, point, connect. All right, so that looks pretty decent. I want to look in my front view one more time, just because this is getting really tight and it could cause problems. And yeah, I've got plenty of room to work with here. So I'm going to right click and go vertex, and I'm just going to move these guys outward a little bit. I just don't want that so tight of a push on it. I'd rather have it a little problemed on the bottom, because honestly the bottom of the sword is the thing we're going to look at the least, so we can just make it work this way. Yeah, this is going to really bake nicely now. And move it down a touch. So that's going to be perfect just about. Yeah, that's really good. Wish this was a little better. So I'm going to do that. Oops, I grabbed this point in here for the sword. I didn't want to. Let me just redo that selection. And move and scale. All right. So that's going to bake a lot nicer. So we're going to go right click, complete tool, and undo our little point mode if you used it that way. And we should have something that looks kind of like this. And the only thing that really matters is that your triangles are below 400 and that your bake comes out good. So you may have found that the last bake was good enough for you, depending on how well you encapsulated everything. So yeah, so we should be kind of well done here. Yeah, I think this is good. Okay, so let's go right click, object mode. Let's grab our object again. Let's go into our polygons tab and the textures. And the only thing that's changed now of drastic concern is this. We kind of did some editing here, but because they were all interior polys, nothing changed. So it's going to still be laid out just fine. These guys, on the other hand, are not. Okay, so what we've got to do is go UV, select them all, right click, select shell. Okay, so now we've got the whole shell selected. It's probably going to be pretty close, but let's just make sure it's perfect. And what we're going to do is now go create UVs, planar mapping, and this is going to be on the Z-axis. Apply. And it didn't do anything. So let me, I can't get this out of the way for you guys. Let me see what I can do. I just want to be able to see that my changes are actually occurring, and I know what the problem was. So, okay, so this is going to introduce another nice little trick. So we're going to go right click, same thing, UVs, select them all, right click, select shell, okay, and then you can go right click, select, and then say convert selection to faces. Okay, so let's do that. And now we're actually selected as the polygons, not the UVs. Okay, so now when we do our projection mapping, it'll actually work. Okay, so there it goes. And as you can see, it's way too big, but that's okay. We'll just move it off to the side for now. But now it's actually mimicking the nice softness that we've just added. Okay, so let's just move that guy out of the way. And let's now grab UVs, select them, right click, select, shell, right click, select, convert selection to faces, and apply. It's going to be flipped over, so we're going to have to go right click, polygons, flip, now the right side up, and let's just squeeze them back into that spot where we had them. And in this case, it's probably going to make the most sense to just move it out of the way for now and zoom in, right click, vertex, I'm sorry, right click, UV. Why is it not going? UV. There it goes. And we're just going to grab all these guys and right click, select, shell, and we're just going to scale them together. So scale and, oops, scale them on down. Just going to maximize this now that we don't need anything else, except for that move tool, of course. So let's do this. And we'll just move it into position. So move and scale. And move. Just till they fit nice. Kind of bumping out off the bottom here. I wonder if I can get this a little bit better. I probably can. So I'm just going to move this guy. Once you have this done, it doesn't really matter because you're just going to rebake everything. So it doesn't matter if you move stuff around and adjust things, just so long as you don't expect to use the maps that you've already baked. Because if you are going to use the maps that you've already baked, then doing this is not going to be so good because you're going to be moving your textures around and it just won't line up anymore. So it's really important that, you know, once you get your bake, you don't move these anymore. But up until then, until you get your final bake, it doesn't really matter. You can kind of do what you want. Just so long as you end up UVing and fixing and making things back the way they should. So we got room here. And now I can bring all this up a little bit. So select, select, right click, select shell, and I'm just going to move them up. And that should be good. This guy's in the way. Right click, select shell, and that all fits. This is a little bit extra space. This doesn't fit. Yeah, okay, so we're gonna have to just push this guy back. Right click, select shell, move him down here. Just kind of making use of the fact that these guys are able to kind of nestle inside of each other like so. Right click, select shell, and move. This guy's got to come up too. Right click, select shell. See, there's just some crossover here. I'm just trying to make sure that nothing's crossing over. Okay, so that's pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and do another bake and see how it comes out. So close and close. And let's go into our channel box layer editor, make sure that both of these guys are set to normal, and give her another bake. Right click, object mode, and let's go into our texture baking. Let's open up our properties panel just to double check everything. Low poly, high poly, good to go, and bake. All right, so there we have it, and this one looks pretty damn good. So let's try our texture again and drop it into place and see how she looks. Alright, so to apply the textures, all we're going to do is we're going to go into Materials, click our little Hypershade window open again. We're going to grab our DX11 shader and right click and say Assign Material to Selection. Okay, so now we should see that we have a kind of funky thing going on, and what that is basically the textures haven't been refreshed. So all we're going to do is just select our DX11 shader, close the window, go into Attribute Editor, and all we're going to do now is just go in here and say Reload, and we're going to back out and go to our normal map. That was the normal map, so now let's go to our diffuse map and say Reload. And now we should have everything lining up perfectly, and we are looking really good. All right, so there we have it, and our structure looks really okay, and everything is pretty sharp and clean and clear. So we should be pretty much done with our texture baking process, and now it's just a matter of actually doing the texturing, which is going to be for section 3. So till next time, that's going to be it, and I hope you guys learned a lot, and yeah, if you enjoyed this, please say so in the comments, and thanks a lot, guys, and thanks for watching the last set of tutorials. This really makes it possible for me to keep going. All right, so yeah, till next time, I bid you adieu. All right, signing off.